No amount of status and power is going to fill something inside of you. Whatever is inside of you that you're missing, you need to probably fill, through introspection. Like we might call it solitude, connection to self. Or maybe, many of us growing up were kind of lonely. And so we wanted to be loved. So we decided to pursue these things so that people would be connected to us. But then by working, we're just lonelier, more and more isolated. In fact, maybe the thing we had to do the entire time was reach out and bring people in. Maybe that was the thing we were missing. And that was probably what happened with me.
If you could talk into Brian's ear in October 2007, when you were 26 years old and you arrived in San Francisco, and you could say, Brian, listen, here are some practical things I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to change your schedule for the next 10, 15 years. I'm going to add 1 extra hour of something to your schedule every week. What would that 1 hour be?
It's completely obvious to me that I would make time for the people I love.
Who is that?
I would start my family, especially my sister. I'm now really close to her, but through a bunch of the Airbnb journey, we would go weeks without talking. For no other reason, I was just busy. And and there's this paradox that when you go on this crazy journey like I do, a lot of people don't reach out to you because they're afraid to reach out to you because they think they're bothering you. But you're so busy that you're dealing with inbound from the business that if no one, you're just reacting all the time. So if your friends don't reach out to you, you're not going to reach out to them because you're just reacting to everything. And they're like, well, they're so busy. If they want to talk to me, they reach out to me. You see how you end up in this drift and drift and drift. I would have stayed connected to my high school friends. I have high school friends I now do an annual trip with. Some of them I didn't talk to for almost 20 years. I graduate, I didn't keep in touch with them. It's one of the great regrets I have. I had college friends that I lived with after RISD, but every year as I went on my Airbnb journey, we talked less and less and less, and I drifted more and more away. And I could go down the list. I had this thing I talked about it once before, but it was 2021. It was like May or June, and I had developed at this point, long relationship with President Obama. He had left office and he became a bit of a mentor to me, and he mentored me on leadership and business. And at one point he took a personal interest in me. And I remember I was single, got out of a relationship, and I kind of felt lonely. And I remember telling him, I think I need to be in another relationship. And he said, I don't think you yet need to be in a relationship. I think what you need are friends. And I thought to myself, but I have friends. What do you mean? But then he explained that he had these 15 people in his life, many of them before, mostly before he was president. And they were totally connected. And I realized I had all these people in my life, but if I called them first, they go, what's going on? What's new with you? And I have to get them all up to speed in my life. And if you have someone in your life where if you were to call them or text them, you have to get them up to speed, then you're not connected. People you're connected to are already up to speed. And I actually think that most of us being alone or being lonely is an illusion. Or maybe the illusion is that people don't love us. And the fact is we have all these people, but we're not reaching out to them. And they're also not reaching out to us. And everyone's waiting for someone else to take some initiative. And it seems crazy because we're just a text message away from our entire life. And yet, what do? We open the phone, and instead of texting people or FaceTiming them or seeing them, what do? Open social media? So opening social media is like going to a dinner party, except you don't go inside, you're looking in the window. And it's great if it's a way station to meet people, but if you're just look in the window and that's your social life, then you're going to feel really sad. So knock on the door and walk in and start talking to people, start hanging out. So that would be the thing I would do. I wouldn't have been totally isolated. I would have stayed connected to my family, my close friends, and really, the only other thing I'd say is I'm now friends with a bunch of other entrepreneurs, including you said you had Daniel Ek on the show, and I would call him a friend, and I spend time with him and others. So in other words, I would keep my old friends, and I would be friends of people in my situation. So Daniel Ek doesn't know the Brian before Airbnb. So maybe he doesn't know the real me, that me, but he does know a different real me that my childhood friends can't know, because my high school and college friends can't possibly know what it's like for me to go through what I'm going through. And I can tell it to them and they can have compassion, but they can't possibly know what I'm talking about. But Daniel can. And Daniel can know what it's like when an executive leaves you, where everyone's kind of, the walls are caving in and you feel like you're not scaling and you're like drowning in this. There's all these things I can describe. We have a shared experience. So I think those two groups are really important. Your roots and your friends from the past and your friends from your present day shared experiences. And there was a period of time where I didn't have either of those really.
As you were saying that, it reminded me of a phrase I heard many years ago in a book I read that said, the things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. And as you're talking about the just sending the text is so easy to do, which is also why it's so easy not to do it, because we're always just one text away. So what's the point sending it? But also it reminded me of why I have that sand timer on the wall, on the shelf over there, because it's funny. I think I've lived so much of my life believing that I could do life later. Like I could pick up the relationship with my family later. And then it's almost like we're living through the frame of it, that we're going to live forever. Like when you look at our decision making, you think, fuck, you're giving like 3 decades of your prime years to building this thing. Like, and we're assuming that we can pick up the rest later and it'll all be there. And that's what I learned. I tried to pick it up later and there was nothing there.
I think that metaphor of the hourglass with the sand slowly dripping every day of your life is a window. And every day that window gets a little narrower and a little narrower and a little narrower.
Should I say the difference though, just with the sand timer?
Tell me.
Is you know it's dripping, but you can't see how much you have left.
Oh, that's a really good point.
So it's and that's why you should almost cover it up, because we can, with the sand timer, we can see how much sand we have left. But in life, I could live for another 6 minutes. And so could you. Or it could be 6 months or 60 years. And
yes, that's a profound thought. And you're right. We don't really live our lives imagining if we had a limited time left, how would we live? I like to, an exercise I've done is imagining, at a young age, I had 10 years left. Because if I had 1 year left, I might be so dramatically different that I might not do something sustainable. I might not work and just only spend time, and that's not sustainable. But I think we always go about life thinking we have many decades. And I think that creates a sense of procrastination. And if you say to yourself, you have this decade, what would you want to do? It gives you enough urgency, but also long enough to have routine to build towards something. And I think that one of the most important things people can do, two thoughts come to my mind. The first thought is that you probably heard this saying, people tend to overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. That 10 years is a profoundly long period of time in some ways if you're disciplined and focused. And you can have a small idea, a small dream, a small goal, and you can build something vast. I mean, I've only done Airbnb for 15 years. So you think about what 10 years is. You wouldn't have hired me as your intern 15 years ago. The other thing about 10 years, though, is think about the amazing life experiences you can have with other people. And I think life is about experiences, but the best experiences are the ones you share with other people. Like on Airbnb, 80% of our trips are with other travelers. Like 80% of people travel with other people. And I think as I think about my memories growing up, I rode the school bus like 180 days a year or more than 10 years. That's thousands of days. And all those memories blend together. I don't really remember those. But I remember basically every vacation I've ever taken. I remember the first time I went to this city, the first time I went to that city, and they're burned in my mind. And I think that when I look back on my life, I'm going to remember all the experiences I went, all the places I saw, the friendships and the people I loved and who loved me, and what I poured my heart and soul into. And I think that that is an important way that I've thought about my life. And I made time for some of it. But I think the pressure of being successful made me so focused on trying to climb a mountain that maybe I didn't focus enough on who I was climbing with. and who is along the way with me.
Bronnie Ware interviewed palliative patients on their last days on earth. So she interviewed people on their deathbed and asked them what their biggest regret was. Hypothetically, if you had 6 minutes left and I was interviewing you to find out what your biggest regret might be, now you had 6 minutes left, what might you say to me?
I think my biggest regret would be the time I didn't spend with people I love. Maybe making sure those people knew how I felt about them. And then I'm 42. I've created many great things. The one thing I haven't created that I've always wanted was probably a family. I just couldn't even explain exactly rationally why, but it's just, you know, like we all, I think humans have many people have an urge to create a family, maybe to feel like they've created something and they can leave something behind. I will have left a company behind, but maybe I could leave more than that behind. So those would be the things that I would regret. But importantly, I'd also like to say, I feel like in other ways, I've lived multiple lifetimes, and I would be filled with so much love and gratitude for what I've been able to experience, because I never thought in my lifetime I would be able to experience what I've experienced right now up to this point. The amount of people I get to meet, the amount of work I get to do. I get to come to work every day to obsess with some of the most creative people in the world. And, you know, most people, they don't get to be surrounded with the people they choose. When you're a CEO, you get to pick the people you're surrounded with. There's something really special. And I've gotten to select some of the most creative, kind, compassionate, intensely driven people in the world, making some things that I'm so proud of that have affected millions of people's lives. So, but I tend to think we regret the things we didn't do, not the things we did do. And I think we tend to regret, you know, the people we didn't spend time with, the people we loved that we didn't tell, or the people we, you know, could have met and didn't.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.